Welcome to episode 104 of the Trading Without Borders podcast with Omobi, your host. Last week we wrapped up discussions on facilitating digital trade provisions, and today we will move on to explore data governance provisions under the AfCFTA Digital Trade Protocol. So we are looking at how data will be protected and secured under the data governance provisions. Let's go right into it. The first provision we are looking at is cross-border data transfers, and under it, state parties are subject to an annex on cross-border data transfers, allow the cross-border transfer of data, including personal data, by electronic means, provided it is meant for digital trade by person of a state party. So what this means is that state parties are to allow people or persons of a state party to transfer data via electronic means if that is meant to be used for digital trade. The next one provides that in the interest of legitimate public policy objective or essential security interest, state parties may actually adopt measures that are inconsistent with the first paragraph that I read. That's transfer of data for digital trade by state party members. If it is not, those measures are not arbitrary or is not discriminatory, the measures are not discriminatory, or they are not disguised restriction on trade, and also do not impose restrictions on transfer of data that are required to achieve the objective. So if the state party feels that in the interest of public policy they are not going to allow cross-border transfers for digital trade, that's allowed provided it is legitimate. You are not using it to restrict trade or just impose arbitrary restrictions on trade. Let's move on to protection of the personal data provisions. How will personal data be protected? The first one states that state parties are to adopt or maintain a legal framework that provides for the protection of personal data of natural persons engaged in digital trade. That for anybody that engaged in digital trade, want to carry out transactions electronically, state parties are to adopt a framework that protects personal data. The personal data could be as much as your name, your phone number, your email, and just as simple as that for people that are wondering what personal data means. So state parties are to adopt a framework that protects, that legal framework that will protect your personal data. The next one states that when the legal framework is being developed, the state parties have to take into account relevant principles and guidelines adopted by regional, continental, and international organizations. So basically, whatever principles that state parties are coming up with, they should take into account best practices, like what are the principles adopted by international organizations, by regional organizations within Africa, continental organizations. Thank you. I don't know why I said thank you then, but let's just move on to the next one. Each state party shall publish information or laws and regulations on the personal data protections it provides to natural persons engaged in digital trade, including how a natural person can pursue a remedy and how an enterprise can comply with any legal requirement. So if an individual feels that my data has been compromised or breached due to this digital trade transaction, the state parties are actually to make provisions for how that individual can pursue a remedy and how enterprise or the organization also needs to comply with any legal requirement. Let's just look at one more out of it. There are more than three. So each state party shall require enterprises in its territory to adopt, maintain, and publish their policies and procedures related to the protection of personal data. For some of us that may have seen with organizations, maybe on their website, you see their privacy policies advising you on how your data will be used and protected. So those are part of measures in respect of data usage and protection. State parties are also to establish national data protection authorities or other relevant bodies responsible for the enforcement of personal protection authorities or other relevant bodies responsible for the enforcement of personal data protection laws. They're also to collaborate in respect of developing mechanisms and frameworks for technical assistance, enforcement, and awareness creation of personal data protection with other state parties. Let's move on to the provision of location of computing facilities. Number 1 states that state parties shall not require a person of another state party to use or locate computing facilities in their territories as a condition for conducting digital trade in that territory. So you can say a state party cannot say, an individual in maybe let's use state party A and B now can say, you have to use the computer or computing facilities in my territory, in our territory, before you can conduct digital trade. No, that's not allowed. Finally, moving on to data innovation provision that provides that state parties shall endeavor to promote and support data innovation by collaborating on data sharing projects, including those involving researchers, academics, industry, and other stakeholders, using regulatory sandboxes where relevant to demonstrate the benefits of the cross-border transfer of data by electronic means, cooperating on the development of policies and standards for data mobility, including consumer data portability, facilitating the exchange of knowledge and best practices, developing data sharing frameworks that protect personal data, taking into account best practices. Okay, so we will wrap up here for today. Next week, we'll move on to business and consumer trust provisions. So we have wrapped up the provision on data governance. Next week, we are looking at business and consumer trust provisions. And we will also continue our discussions on the AU digital transformation strategy. And as usual, the podcast is for educational purposes only. If you need expert advice, please reach out to a trade experts around you. And if you also want to talk to me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Momobola Dekola. And until next week, I say to you, bye-bye.